Okay, we're loud. Mr.
I know my
Carey.
Okay. All right, everyone, let's call this meeting to order. This is a planned unit development workshop, special meeting that we've called. So Tammy, if you want to start with a roll call.
Okay. Ms. Logan?
Here.
Mr. Crease?
Here.
Mr. Adams?
Here.
Mr. Van Arsdale?
Here.
Mr. Welly is excused. Mr. Kerrigan?
Here. Okay. All right, so where we left off was we started getting into PUD and why things are exempt, and decided we needed to focus a separate meeting on that, or this workshop. So you want to start us off on?
Certainly, yes. Tonight we are going to discuss what a planned unit development is and how that works inside any given local government, and kind of the parameters of that and how it's typically applied. So if we could go to the next slide, please.
Can I ask you a question on
Yeah.
PUD in general? Because my P&Z experience is limited to right here. Is a PUD common throughout many other places throughout Florida? Do all counties and cities have PUDs, or a lot of them?
Yes, is the short answer. So if you think of, and they come in a variety of scales. So if you think of the West Bay sector plan in Bay County that now spills into
Airport.
Walton County, yeah, that is essentially a PUD because they master planned the whole thing and got all the permissions for what they call the DSAP, the Detailed Specific Area Plan, which is essentially a PUD, and showed on a map, this is going to be residential, this is going to be commercial, here's the airport. These are the general roadway locations. So that was essentially a PUD. Walton County does a lot of PUDs, especially in the southern part, south of the Choctawhatchee Bay. Seaside is a PUD. Rosemary Beach is a PUD. They have a mixture of uses under one parameter of rules and regulations that they adopt into the land development regulations.
Okay.
So it is a tool that we commonly use as planners, and they are typically located in the land development regulations. It is outside of a conventional zoning district, and when we talk about conventional, we mean our residential district, our commercial district, our tourist mixed use, which is a category that would allow for a PUD because it allows for a mixture of uses, but it can be used as a tool outside of a zoning district that is maybe strictly one thing, one category like residential. And they're usually meant to encourage innovative design techniques so that you can get something like a seaside or something like a Rosemary Beach, where you have a mixture of uses and you have a mixture of housing types, or you maybe have a mixture of commercial and some maybe what we call industrial, but it could be contained inside a building, so there's no noise, smoke, or glare emitted, but it's maybe some sort of manufacturing use that could be enclosed inside of a building. Oftentimes a brewery is considered industrial use because they're manufacturing something on site, so that could be something you might not typically see in a commercial district, but you could have inside of a PUD that has a mixture of uses. Whatever it does, though, it does have to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. As we all know, the comprehensive plan is that overarching document that guides our growth and development in a 20-year time frame today. It used to be 10 years, but now Florida legislature says we have to look at the 20-year horizon. So, so whatever it says, it does have to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So we can't deviate from that. But we could use some of the categories that we have, like I mentioned, the tourist mixed use, or even the commercial category, because it does allow for a variety of uses, including residential, to locate a PUD inside of. So oftentimes they allow a differing type of uses, whether that's commercial or neighborhood commercial and residential together. But sometimes it's just a simple allowance of housing types. So you might have a single family subdivision in there along with what we call missing middle housing, which is medium density housing attached usually. Could be a quadruplex, could be a 10-plex, but a mixture of housing types. So So it's not just a single-family residential subdivision, but maybe in the center, there's some multifamily, and at the perimeter, there's single-family or the reverse. But that would all be inside of one parameter of the PUD, the planned unit development. And the planned unit development will have a master plan and some regulations that they have developed or we have developed together that is adopted. So it's not just a map, it's also the regulations that form the PUD that they have to adhere to as they go and continue to develop. So these two examples I have in the graphics, the top one I would suggest is, just by looking at the picture, is likely a differing housing types, where you see surrounding, you have some single-family residential footprints, but in that green spot, it looks like you might have a couple of quadruplexes and maybe some duplexes, and maybe there's a clubhouse in the middle. So it allows for different types of housing. The one on the bottom, I would suggest, has maybe some apartments, but maybe at the perimeter on the street level, there's some commercial development. So within that one development pattern, there's different types of uses. It looks like on the left-hand side, I also see like a park space, so maybe there's some sort of amenity there that's open to the public that would be part of that PUD. Next slide, please. So here's another one that I found when I was doing some research, just to give you an idea of what I call a bubble map. This is kind of what the West Bay Sector Plan did also when they were developing their different uses within the 75,000 acres that they have. The St. Joe Company had at their initial start. Now it's much larger because it goes into Walton County. But you create a map of, red could be commercial, yellow could be residential, just kind of a bubble map of where you think things are going to be inside of your planned development, with some transit corridors, so roadways, if you have some bike areas you want to plan for, or if you want to have, if you're not us, of course, but if you're a developer in a bigger city, you might have some transit, like bus systems or light rail, if you're able to do that. So this is kind of what you would see as a conceptual idea for a PUD that would come forward, also with the framework that the developer is anticipating.
Is Windmark a PUD?
Yeah, I'm sure it is, because it's got that commercial corridor down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's got that town center and the residential to it. Yep.
And isn't Sweetwater a proposed PUD?
So that's a good question. I think it was proposed. I don't know what the timing is on that, but when I was reading through our code, it does say that if they don't get a building permit within 3 years, it's considered null and void. So I'm not convinced that they have a PUD today.
How long has it been?
More than that.
Since 2021, I checked it.
Oh, wow.
Uh-huh.
What's that?
So it's out of date, like they gotta start over again.
By the code, it has expired.
Pardon me?
By the code that we have, it has expired.
Yeah.
Yep. They didn't get the building permit.
Well, how long for other developments? Like, you got 3 of them that are on 15th Street. You got the one next to the plumbing place. Nothing's happened to that now for like 6-7 years. You got the one down 15th Street where it turns to the left, which was approved for like 48 houses.
But that wasn't a PUD.
No, but I mean,
It's
is
a
that also
subdivision.
under a 3? No, what's the limit for that? When these developers come in, they want to build, and they come in, they clear cut the property, like 2 of them sites have been clear cut down to nothing. And the place next to the plumbing company, it's just sitting there as a dirt lot. And that's been years now, years.
There's no real time frame on that. Once you get a development order, then you got a year or 2, year and a half to finish. But as long as you do a subdivision and there's no PUD or any requirements like that, just
So we have no
Just a
regulation that, like,
Just
if
a
something
It's just a
come in.
plat sitting there, and until they decide to actually build something on that plat, it's just a
So they
separation
can
of
clear
lot.
their land and leave it clear, whether they build or not.
On the plat.
Forever.
Yeah, so on the site plan, if it's a commercial use, I'll have to go back and look, but I thought we did have an expiration on that. They have to pull a building permit, but a plat, once they get the plat approved, it's theirs.
Does anybody know of any other PUDs that we have had in this city?
Well, you got the paper company.
Well, no, I'm talking about other than the St. Joe, because we've already mentioned that.
I'm not
I
aware.
could not find any in my notes. Okay,
The Salt Creek's just a plat too.
well, that's,
That's
No,
part of
that's
the,
part
that's
of-
part of the
part of
PUD
that.
that they have on there, yeah.
okay.
So, the ordinance, when I say ordinance, we all adopt everything into our code by ordinance, and then it's codified, so it's codified into land development regulations. But the elements, different elements, you know, everybody's different. A county can be different than a city. Mexico Beach should be different than the city of Tallahassee, just because of the nature of the demographic and the nature of the size of the city and the services offered. But, so it's all needs to be catered to what Mexico Beach wants to offer. But typically they allow, as I mentioned earlier, different styles of types of uses inside of the PUD. Different standards. They might create some design guidelines as part of their PUD. That's something we could require. It's up to the developer to propose that, but if we wanted to require that as part of our Chapter 2 PUD regulations, we could look at that. They would need to look at the percentage of land uses. So if there's going to be a certain percent of residential and a certain percent of commercial, they need to include that in their PUD document. They usually want to require a maximum density allowance and a maximum intensity, which would be square feet of non-residential space in their PUD document. We usually want them to explain what they're asking to deviate from in the LDR in whatever zoning district that might require it otherwise, to let us know, and we can compare then whether or not we feel like that's a public benefit or a benefit to the community. Usually, sometimes you can detail procedural process, application process. Usually that's a local government that looks into lining that out in the ordinance and how we're going to proceed through that. And this is why I made some changes to the draft that you have. I made some changes to the procedures, and we can talk about that here in a minute. But so what we want to list, this is some of what we need to talk about tonight, what we want to list to require them to submit and what process they need to go through in order to receive an approved PUD down the line. So we need to also decide what the minimum size is, and I'll talk about that in a future slide. But usually you have a minimum acreage requirement to have a PUD. Just remember too, although it's less important in Mexico Beach because the commercial category does allow for a multiple array of uses, but in communities where commercial only means commercial and not residential also, you can essentially have a PUD on a small parcel because the PUD goes up and not out. So you might have office and retail on the bottom floor and then residential above, and you could have, in larger cities, you could have other things mixed in too, like maybe there's a daycare center inside, or maybe on the third floor there's some sort of community center. But so your PUD don't think about it just as something that goes out, it can also go up inside the same building. The PUD document should outline landscaping and setbacks and should talk about compatibility among uses within that PUD and even with whatever is on the edge of that boundary, so that whatever is occurring on the property line, on the boundary of the PUD, we want to make sure that's compatible with existing and what's out there on the ground today. We want them to describe what the incentive is for us to approve the PUD. You know, there needs to be some public benefit. We are giving something to that developer. There should be something in exchange that they give to the community. Whether or not they're looking for a higher density, maybe we require them to have a certain number of the housing units be less than market value so that it can be considered more affordable to some of your residents. The PUD should talk about phasing. How long is it going to take? How many units are going to be built in this first phase? What's going to be built in the second phase? And a deadline for the outline, the timeline of the PUD. And then compliance and enforcement measures. Kind of like if they say they're going to do this, how do we make sure that happens down the line? So where in the PUD are we going to talk about that, and how are we going to make sure that's enforced? Next slide, please. So, next one after that. Sorry, are we behind one? There we go. So as I mentioned earlier, the comprehensive plan always is the ruling document. And so the comprehensive plan is by nature a little less detailed than the land development regulations, because that's where the regulation hits the road. So this is where we talk about setbacks and height limitations and impervious surface and all the things that they need to be considerate of when they're putting together something for a site plan review. They also have to pay attention to the comprehensive plan, but it's a little more 30,000 foot level where the LDRs are down here on the ground as to what's developed. And so as we look at Mexico Beach, we know that we already do have some categories that would allow for a zoning PUD or an overlay district PUD. And the tourist commercial allows for specific low intensity non-residential uses, so it wouldn't allow maybe a big box store, but it might allow a small box store. And the tourist mixed use allows for a mixture of uses in the commercial category. But those are the three that we have currently on the books today, that if somebody wanted to come in and apply for a PUD, they would have to look for those land use categories on our map, or they would have to apply for a future land use map amendment to be approved to have those categories in order to have the PUD go forward. And then the other thing that we need to think about, because we did talk about this last time, is the acreage requirement. And I have a slide to show you an example of what that looks like a little bit in Mexico Beach, a couple slides forward, but if we can go to the next slide. This is not an exhaustive list of what the PUD currently states today in section 2.03.00. It gives you an idea of the framework of what we have. The PUD must depart from the strict conformance of the development standards, use, and specific contact regulations of the code to the extent specified in the PUD development plan. So we are looking for someone to deviate from the zoning regulations in order to create a more unique and possibly differing environment than what our standard zoning districts required. Some of the things that are currently required to be able to have a PUD, you have to be under single ownership, whether or not that's a single person or a partnership or a corporation. But it can't be me and my best friend over here. We have to somehow be in business together in some sort of corporation in order to apply for that PUD. Density is limited to the comprehensive plan allowance. So if we have 18 units to the acre in the underlying future land use category, that's all the PUD's going to get. Now the PUD could say we're going to put 25 units. We're going to put 25 units in maybe a 48-story building over here, and then leave this area over here open space and kind of move that density around, but they can't exceed overall the 18 units to the acre. We currently require a minimum of 5 acres, and on the next slide I'll go over this next point just to give you a visual, but that might be problematic for Mexico Beach because there aren't very many parcels that are 5 acres. So if we want to have this, we want to be able to let somebody use it. If it's possible, somebody could come in and find a bunch of land that they could assemble to create 5 acres if it's all vacant. Or even if it's not, they could demolish and have something to start with. But I think it's important to understand what your conditions are when we're creating this language, and if it's almost impossible to find a 5-acre parcel, then is there really a need to have a PUD?
How small can
They can be any size. I mean, it's up to you, but you want it to be meaningful. So if you have something too small, are you really going to be able to get a mixture of something, housing types or uses, on a parcel that's so small?
You know, it almost seems like this whole thing with the PUD, you look at the Mexico Beach zoning, and I brought it up at the last meeting, and in here you have the change, just like you read, where here it says you can vary from the assigned zoning district. And that was my biggest problem we talked about last week. If you're in low density residential and it's all zoned low density, and you have 3 or 5 acres, like that church property that could be rezoned to put a PUD in there, you have single family residential all the way around it.
But if it's single family residential, you can't put a mixture of uses there because it only allows for single family residential.
Yeah, but this says right here, in your changes here, it has the it says you can development standards, use and specific contact regulations of the assigned zoning. You may deviate from it. Well, if you can deviate from it, that's deviating from single family. Single family is single family.
Okay, but you still have to go back to that future land use category. So if the future land use category, remember that you can't change whatever that says. So if the future land use category says single-family residential, that's all you're getting.
So the PUD does not allow you to deviate from that part.
That, it does not allow you to deviate from the comprehensive plan.
It's got to match. If they're
Yes,
right, it's
yeah,
gotta
so
match
that,
what's
so
in
if
there.
it were a single family, if it were residential low density, and it were 5 acres, they could apply for a different future land use category, they could apply for tourist mixed use. That has to go through that legislative process and be approved before they could get the PUD.
Does it allow you to deviate from the LDR? So they're single-family homes, but you can deviate from the setbacks and the
Yes.
landscaping requirements
Yes.
of those things
Yeah.
that would be different for the single-family homes within there.
Yes, but if it says, and I don't have the plan with me, but if the plan says only single-family homes, which I think is just a density parameter in the plan, then that's all you're getting. But I think the plan says it's a certain density limitation. So if it were a certain density limitation and it allows for, let's say it doesn't say single-family homes, it just says 8 units to the acre or 6 units to the acre. They could have, I'm losing my voice. They could have a different type of housing in there. They could have a duplex or they could have a triplex. But they still couldn't go over that 6 units to the acre.
Okay, well, the other problem I see, just like Sugar Sands 2. Sugar Sands 2 was built before it became part of Mexico Beach. That was part of the agreement, that they were following Bay County rules, and then it was going to be brought into Mexico Beach. When you look at everything here on the zoning map, we're pretty much full, unless everything here, the paper company behind here, comes in here. And it isn't like Mexico Beach is just going to acquire this property around our current city limits. It's going
No,
to come from
they
somebody
want
else wanting to.
they want your water, that's why.
Well, yeah,
they would come in.
exactly, but I mean, I can see the same thing happening, it's just like down on 386, with a development by the Harmon property. I mean, the Mexico Beach started talking, looking into how much it costs for the water and the sewage and everything else to do that, but that's already going to be zoned and built under somebody else's regulations.
Yes,
Now we have Sugar Sands 2, and it's built, it doesn't follow Mexico Beach, any kind of zoning. I don't even know what zoning it is.
well, that's something the city, if that's important for the city, that's something the city probably really needs to sit down and discuss, because I see that will happen again and again.
Well, it's
They'll
gonna keep
develop
going.
under Big County's regulations, and then they'll annex in.
You know, if you look at the comp plan, you read right in there, and that actually pretty much says that use our current water system and everything else before we start sprawling out in Bay County. And that's part of the comp plan, it's right in there.
That's something the city probably needs to.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but nobody follows
Have a plan for
what's
it.
in there right now. It's not being followed.
Well, if they're not inside the city limits, we can't require them to do anything by our standards.
Now, that's gonna just keep happening, because as they annex and annex and annex, it's gonna be annexed in Bay County or Gulf County, whatever their regulations are. It's almost like, is there anything that could be even put into our rules to say if property is gonna be annexed, it's gonna be annexed under Mexico Beach policies, zoning requirements?
But if they have already developed,
So that ain't gonna happen.
If they already got a PUD from the county, which they have.
That's what's gonna happen.
And if Mexico Beach agrees to do the annexation, then that's how they come in.
So I mean, for the PUD, for us right now, it's probably only one lot or maybe 2 that actually a PUD could be built in Mexico Beach. When our current city limits right now, there's nowhere else to put anything.
At 5 acres.
5 acres. Or if you made 4 acres, you got one place right there.
Okay, let me ask this.
Oh, man.
That's it, yeah.
I could not find where, it said that, well, currently we are at 5 acres minimum for a PUD. Okay, and this is what I couldn't find, what zoning categories we can build in. And I have a specific reason for asking that. You're saying that we can only put a PUD in tourist commercial, tourist mixed use, and commercial.
if it is a mixture of uses, if it wants a mixture of uses, if it wants more than just residential and differing housing types, you have to find a future land use category that will allow the commercial to develop.
Okay, but then if it is a PUD that is strictly residential, it could go into residential low density or residential general if they have the land.
It would not allow for anything non-residential to occur there.
But it is possible to build just houses.
It depends on how we end up writing the,
Well, no, I'm saying currently.
yeah, well, currently you don't require differing uses.
Okay, the reason I'm asking this, I did research because I remember very clearly some things that are not what they are now. And I have here a copy of the 2014 Land Development Regulations, which, on PUDs, which is dramatically detailed. And there is so much in this Land Development Regulation about PUDs that is not in this at all. And I'm talking details. And it also, the first thing that hits me is it allowed PUDs in all of our category uses, including residential low density and residential general PUDs. So we used to have a limit of 7 acres minimum for a PUD. It was along the way after 2014 reduced to 5 acres. Now it's being suggested potentially 3 acres. So if you look at the zoning map here and you consider if it wants to be a mixed-use PUD, we have only 2 places where it could go, really. Because if you look at the color codes, one of them is La Siesta, and I think that's 3 acres, but I'd have to double check that. But then you've got what we call rustic sands, right? And they just sold, by the way. So there's no place else in commercial, and there is no place in the, what is that, tourist commercial, because if you look at the purple here, and then the tourist mixed use, all we've got is the proposed Sweetwater and St. Joe. So we have no place for a PUD that wants mixed use. If we have a PUD that is just mixed residential, I'm getting this right, if it's just mixed residential, only houses, and we lower that to 3 acres, here's my list of potential places that could go, and it's a whopper. The question, what we have used in the past is keeping the acreage as high as it is to keep overdevelopment to a minimum. So that is something that we must drastically consider. If they present a residential only PUD, just houses, it could go into, well, this list, and it would be in all of our residential low density and our residential general. So we've got to be very careful about that. This frightens me to death, lowering a standard that could potentially be used in that way when this is our only guardrail to keep overdevelopment at least corralled. So,
Yeah, but from another point of view, and I'm
Sure.
listening to what you're saying,
Sure.
but Mexico Beach is gonna grow, no doubt about it, it's gonna grow. And we have to manage that growth, right?
yeah,
So you're not gonna stop it from growing.
but where are we gonna grow?
Well, you just said you had how many different
This
places?
is St. Joe, and this is the Sweetwater.
Yeah, but the different places you found.
1 and 2.
But I
That's
just
it.
want to clarify, just because that's all that's on the map today, doesn't mean somebody can't apply for a change.
Okay? Which, in my opinion, reinforces my point that you don't know what's going to be changed, and there are any number of places that if you have only 3 or 4 acres that a potential PUD could come in a residential district. Why would we want to do that? And destroy the
Generally-
residential town?
Generally, varying housing types helps with affordability.
Not if you don't build affordable housing, which we have yet to build in this town.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you can develop a varying housing type, which might be something small and something very large, then you have a wider range of affordability.
We have a consistent pattern of not building a single affordable housing area in this town in the past 25 years.
Well,
Not one.
Where in the comp plan? I must have missed some. I've looked at the comp, I've been looking at this stuff for the last couple of weeks. Does it list anything about a PUD besides, it says in a tourist mixed use category may be implemented through the planned unit development process? That's the only thing I've seen in this whole thing that says planned unit development, and it's just in that tourist mixed use.
it's
That's
not
it.
common to have it in the
It's not in
comprehensive
any
plan.
other, and, you know, I go back to the LDC for the planned unit development, which was in here, which is the last update 22, versus that one she has. There's nothing in here neither.
It's not common to have it in the comprehensive plan. It's usually an LDR.
And we had a question in the back.
You don't want to stick.
Let's let him ask his question in the back.
And I don't know if the attorney can answer it for Laura or Mel. If, as Bruce says, that Mexico Beach is going to grow, and as Lisa has indicated, it's going to have to be through annexation, who decides what that property that's being annexed becomes? Is it commercial? Is it mixed use? Is it low density residential? Who makes that decision?
The city council.
Ultimately the council, but the applicant would apply, and then the council would either agree as part of the annexation or not.
Well, and also the honesty of the matter is now, currently, it's less stringent to build in the Bay County.
Yeah.
And
what we're talking
so
about.
they're gonna build out whatever they're gonna build out under those rules before they even
Exactly.
apply to be annexed. And so
Exactly.
you're kinda handcuffed. If you're, so either you're gonna provide the water and the fire and police and all like that and not get any tax revenue, it's.
We don't have to
Or
supply
yeah,
the
don't
water.
annex them, right?
Yeah, or don't annex them, yeah.
Correct.
Well, Laura, you stopped on one of these bullets here, we stopped you, but I'd like to talk a little bit more in your experience on must demonstrate a substantial benefit to Mexico Beach, the residents and the community. And I heard one benefit, you said it could be more affordable housing. What are some other benefits? You've done other PUDs. Why should we have a PUD of any size?
So they could be required to provide a community attribute. It could be a community clubhouse, so that maybe there's a community center that people can come and meet and have activities that they are required to provide as part of that exchange. Affordable housing, it could, in some communities, it's public access to the water. So if somebody owns a lot of waterfront property and they want to put a PUD there, the marina downtown where they put the hotel, that's all still public access. To require public access to the water so that it's not closed off, it's not a gated community. That's kind of common. To have walking trails coming through, like they do with Water Sound, I believe, north in Walton County. They have a trail that goes through that's public access. It's really something that the developers should be working with this community, the city, with to figure out what that need is, or it's usually based on a need or an action or something that that locally wants to be preserved. Maybe they go above and beyond in preserving natural vegetation, or maybe they go above and beyond in some environmental feature. But I'm a strong believer that whenever the city is granting something, whether it's a land use change, or it should be an exchange, there should be a benefit to each party. It shouldn't just be a one-way street.
Somebody mentioned Windmark, and I remember that negotiation, and the public got the Bayway walking trail and piers into the water, and you can go enjoy the amenities of town center. So what would you consider the benefits to Mexico Beach or you or Mel both for Salt Creek?
Ha. That's a loaded question. I mean, again, if there's some way to have public access to, it's just, that canal is such a strange thing, and the city owned, but to somehow maybe retain public access to that canal, maybe there's a kayak launch in there. I don't know if that's the best use of that canal because it's going to be so congested, but some sort of, maybe there's a nature walk through there. I don't know, but it's something I haven't really thought about, so I'm just off the top of my head. I've not even been to the property, so I don't know.
Is there some commercial area in there, isn't there? Or no?
So a long time ago, I saw something about where they were going to have a commercial hub in there, but they were trying to figure out how because don't they own the property on the south side?
They own both sides.
Yeah, but they couldn't figure out how to affordably cross that. I think the bridge was.
But once they have the PUD designation, do you have to build out the phases that you said you would? Does
Yes.
there have to be a commercial piece?
Yes. Yeah.
So
I don't think I've seen that PUD, so I don't even know what it says and what their
I remember
parameters
being
are.
in these meetings for the townhomes that I thought they were complete, but they're continuing back.
Oh, I'm sorry, we were talking about two different things. I was talking about the one that's not developed.
I think when it was originally brought to us, the townhomes were going to be 42 townhomes. There were 3 sets of 3 buildings and 3 sets of 3 buildings.
2 phases. There was
Was
2 phases.
there always a second
There was a
phase?
second phase, there was 2
Okay.
phases of townhomes. And the commercial space, it was in there, the problem was, I wasn't on a P&Z at the time, but it's in there, it's 2 big tracts of commercial property. Everybody in Mexico Beach thought they were going to build something. They're not doing a damn thing. If you want to build something, if you want to come in and put in a supermarket or a sports bar, you got to plow it down and put it in yourself. We confronted them on that, and they got no plans to develop it. If you want to develop it, it's there, it's set aside, but,
Well,
I mean, that's
to be
ridiculous.
fair, St. Joe Company is not a developer. I mean, they sell the parcels and somebody else builds it, like D.R. Horton is building the homes. They would find a commercial builder to build the commercial part of it. They're not in the construction industry.
Yeah, but that was one of the things as the first PUD. I mean, I went to all the meetings. I wasn't on P&Z, but all the meetings, and everybody assumed that we were going to get this stuff in there.
And
The
it could be
commercial,
they're
they
trying,
wanna put
and we don't
commercial in
know behind the scenes.
Well, we
It could be
thought
they're
they would
trying
do
to
it.
market it, but maybe whoever's looking at it says there's not enough rooftops yet.
You know, just like you look at Windmark. Windmark, that town center was built by Windmark. It wasn't, and down here, whatever goes in there, it's going to be built by Joe Blow, who decides to come in there and plow it down and spend the money and do it himself. It could sit there forever. We didn't know that. We thought, oh, the apartments being
I
built,
know
the townhomes,
Windmark has
something's
been
going to be built.
struggling with their downtown.
So that was probably one of the substantial benefits. I could
Yes.
see that. If someone says, well, you're gonna get commercial, you need commercial, you have no restaurants, and we're gonna allow for office spaces and all these things, it's just a matter of if it happens or
Yeah,
not.
that's it.
Well, with that, the St. Joe PUD down there, they were to put that commercial around the boat ramp, which is where it still stands. And yes, everybody thought that it was to be built immediately or soon, but you know, there's no movement there. But another thing, you asked an excellent question about what are the benefits to Mexico Beach for Salt Creek. And you were trying to think of some, and you thought maybe something with the canal, but we gave up so much. For instance, one of the things we gave up was nobody in this PUD will ever have to pay a canal use fee. And that does not benefit Mexico Beach. I mean,
Because they're Mexico Beach residents, is that why you're saying that?
no, they don't have to be Mexico Beach residents. It's in the agreement that the city signed at that time, that nobody who rents or owns will ever have to pay a fee to use the canal. I mean, there are things that, this is our experience with the PUD.
That's why I'm asking the
It's
question.
not, it's not working out all
I
that
can see
well.
one other potential benefit, or probably proposed benefit, was, I wouldn't call it affordable housing, but more affordable housing. You can go buy a townhouse that you can't buy elsewhere. You can buy a single-family home that you probably, overall, the average prices are cheaper there than the rest of Mexico Beach. I can see that being reasonable, so therefore we have families that are coming in and living in these places. But I don't think we got the walking trails or any other
No.
amenity to the,
So then, if
General.
there's a phasing schedule, that should be looked at to see whether or not they're on track with what they
and
promised.
can it be when you're negotiating the PUD and creating the PUD that there are requirements?
Yes,
Before you build 20% of your residential homes,
It should be
you
part of the
must
PUD.
start
that should
construction
be part of
on
the PUD.
the commercial,
Yes,
rather than just, we're gonna push this to the back of 50
that's
years.
part of the phasing schedule, so that should be part of the PUD.
Well, I guess my question is, in order for a PUD to be beneficial, there has to be some level of enforcement of what's agreed to in the PUD.
Yes,
Otherwise, they're just getting free for all to go out there. If nobody on our end, that the city's going to hold them to what they've agreed to. And I think that's some of my concern is somebody comes in here and gets a PUD approved and they build out at 20 to 30%, and let's say you have a 2008, well, they're not just gonna keep throwing good money after bad. And then so like, how do you force a developer to
it's not that hard, there
complete-
has to be cooperation with the building department, they just don't get building permits until they,
Now, would that be part of the
Facility.
phase, just a question, we're talking about the PUD and the commercial. There's two commercial districts in that PUD. One is around the boat ramp, like Lisa said, and the other one is between the townhouses and the apartments. There was commercial between them. And that was the big selling point was, oh, you're gonna have these apartments, 200 and something apartments, you're gonna have all these townhomes before we build the houses. We got commercial between it. There'll be stores, sports bars, this and that, and everything else. It's just sitting there as woods. I mean, is
Well,
that?
there is a schedule, and that was pretty far out in the future, I do know that. It was
Wouldn't that be
pretty
like
sure
part
it
of
was a
that
28,
phase?
30.
yes, it would be
I mean, if
listed
it's
as-
by the apartments and the townhouses, it would be that phase they're in
Well,
right now.
not necessarily part of the townhouse phase, but it should show in the PUD documents the phasing of that.
Gotta find out when that is.
Mel, do you have that? Do you have what the date of the first commercial requirement?
Not off the top of my head, but I can look up documents for you.
Yeah, 'cause there's two of them, like I said, there's one on the boat ramp in between the apartments and the townhomes. Two separate sections.
Just on that bullet, it is really up to the city, well, you all, as you review it before the city and make a recommendation to the city council, to make sure that there is a benefit to the city when these are being approved. So I would suggest that language be in the ordinance or in the code to show that there is a substantial benefit to the residents, and whether that is the walking trails or whatever it might be. Every case is different, to make sure that's listed in the PUD document.
If the city's not getting a benefit, then the PUD doesn't make sense.
You know,
Right.
sounds like a PUD can make sense if you negotiate a whole bunch of benefit,
Yes.
and then enforce that benefit.
Yes.
Enforce it, there's your.
But if you allow it to just be a little city within the city,
Uh-huh.
then
See, that's where I land. I'm open to a PUD as long as there's, if we're going to give something,
Yes.
Yes.
we, the city, wants to receive something.
Yes.
But the second half of that
100%.
is, I think, from what I'm hearing, is we've had PUDs, and it's like they get what they want, and the city kind of ends up holding the bag. And I don't know that. I'm just saying that might be the perception of some people. And so, I'm happy to look at a PUD, even though there's probably not a whole lot of places that you can put it. But I'm happy for people to come up with innovative ideas and share it with the city and let the city decide whether or not that's a direction that they would like to go. But I also agree with Lisa, you've got to have some accountability on our end to make sure that people are meeting schedules and doing what they're supposed to do as well.
Another question we were talking this on that, on your changes here, under our old PUD plan, it has in here dedications. You have it completely struck out. Is there a reason for that?
Let's get to that after after we finish
Okay.
this part of the workshop. I'll have to go back and look at that. But yeah, dedications are something that should be outlined in the PUD.
24, can I get a copy of that 2014?
Sure, I'll give it to Tammy to make you a copy of it.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very informative.
And I was not with you in 2014, so I don't know what changed and when it changed, but.
If you would, please go ahead.
Yes. So we want them to show the deviations and departures from the code requirements that they're requesting, whether or not setback differences or maybe road width differences. There's different things that they can request as part of their design. We want them to, and we do require them to show compatibility with surrounding uses that's outside of the PUD boundary. But we don't tell them what that means. What does it mean to be compatible? So that's something that we need to look at. The phasing schedule, you do require that. You do require you have to have a building permit within 3 years of the PUD is deemed withdrawn. And then you have modification quantifiers that says you can't exceed dwelling units by more than 5% of the increase of the total, among other things. So these are the things that the PUD ordinance or the PUD language currently includes. So if we could go to the next slide. I didn't have time to look at every single vacant lot, but just to give you an idea, this parcel right here is 4 acres. That's outlined in red. It's owned by the church. The parcel to the north of it, that's funny triangular shape, is about 10 acres, almost 11. And then there's a parcel that the subdivision that's not been built was 7 acres. So to give you an idea what 5 acres looks like, the red parcel is 4.
And the red parcel's not in the city limits.
Yeah, that's not inside the city limit.
It's
Okay.
it's an enclave.
This one right here above the church is the rest of Casuna.
Single family.
It's the rest of the Casuna
Yeah, single
subdivision.
family.
And of course, this is the one that wanted to put the 35 or 37 houses on it. But this is why I was concerned about what zoning categories a PUD could go into, because if just right here, if it were just houses, now I understand, not mixed use, then, let me see if I can do this upside down. Oh, gotta look at it. Okay, this is what I'm looking at. Here on the corner of 15th and Hatley, there's still this piece of land that's vacant. If you added that to that vacant piece of land, that's 3 acres, so you could put a housing-only PUD in there. This is a separate piece of property owned by somebody else. It's 4 acres, a little over 4 acres. That could be a separate housing-only PUD. If you come down here, and this is 98, let's see, this, I think it's this stretch is either 3 or 4, could be used as a housing-only PUD. This is a 7-acre lot here, but this, and it goes on and on throughout the city for about 10 different places. So that was part of my concern, that we get purely housing PUDs. Now that I understand the difference, you could put purely housing PUDs in
The housing areas.
housing areas, but do you want that kind of density? Because this is all,
The density is not changing.
it's all single family.
The density is whatever the comprehensive plan says the maximum density is. That's not changing.
So that would be, you could still get 6 units per acre. That's a lot of houses to cram in these places. That's my concern, again, in lowering the requirement from 5 acres to 3 acres.
But you're still getting the same density. It's the same. The
You
density
can get that density now, is what you're saying.
Yeah, you're not gonna build any more houses, whether it's 3 or 5,
That's right.
to the acre.
Most of your PUDs, though, have a mixture. They're not just a mixture of housing, they have a mixture of other uses. And that's what you're typically trying to encourage, because you've got housing now, and they're building more housing. One thing that you all haven't really dealt with is the Live Local Act that mandates if somebody walks in and wants to build affordable housing and they meet certain requirements, then they get to build affordable housing, doesn't matter what land use category you have.
Now, when you say affordable housing, just to make sure I understand, are you talking about a lower cost housing than the surrounding area or Section 8 housing?
It's 120% of the area median income affordability.
20%.
So Bay County, and I don't know what Mexico Beach is, I haven't looked it up, but Bay County's at about $37,000 for average median income. So whatever that person can afford, and it's usually 30% of their salary directed towards rent or mortgage plus utilities. Whatever that figure
And the
is.
state was kind enough to impose that on everybody a couple of years ago, 3 years ago maybe. Yeah.
But it's not, it's got a lot of parameters. It's not just a free-for-all. They have to, it has to be in certain zoning categories. It's not residential. It has to be in a commercial, mixed use, or industrial category. And they have to build 60% of the units as affordable with 120% of the AMI. And it's just, there's a lot of hoops.
So, but Mexico Beach apparently hasn't seen that yet. Most of the smaller cities haven't necessarily seen that yet. But I think the county had to do a few of them, haven't they?
I don't, the last I heard, the only one that had been approved in Northwest Florida was in Walton County.
Okay. I thought Bay County had approved one.
It's harder to approve them in areas with lower AMI because they have to bring the rent or the cost down so low, it's just too cost prohibitive.
Right. But just FYI, it's out there, and someday somebody's gonna walk in and say, I meet all these criteria, and that's gonna limit what you can say to them.
Okay, Laura?
Okay, so let's go to the next slide. And so these are just some of the things that I found would be helpful to include in the requirements to apply for a PUD. I suggest you have a boundary survey, you require proof of ownership. I personally believe having a conceptual approval process is helpful. Right now you just have one and done and you go through the process. But conceptually approving is a two-phase process so that they have more of an idea of what they're going to be for before they come back and refine it to a detailed document that's finally approved. That way they can get your feedback and maybe adjust as necessary, have some time to go back to the board and fix their documents and then come back for final approval, rather than coming to the first time for approval. You don't have time to work and negotiate. It's just, this is what we're planning to do, yes or no. So I'm a firm believer in the conceptual process. You also don't require a mixture of uses, so that's something we need to talk about. If you want to require the mixture of uses, it allows it right now, but it doesn't require it. I have introduced that into the draft document that you have. But if you just want to have the ability to do a single-use PUD, that's something that we can talk about. The provision of community benefits is not currently mentioned in your language, so I believe that you need to talk about that and require that to be a part of whatever it is their design is. And connectivity, I think it's important to go ahead and make sure they're connecting to the rest of the community, whether or not it be a roadway or trail or bike path or something. Make sure that if there's a stub out somewhere that they would have to connect to that. And then
I find that all interesting because everything plus more that you just talked about is in this old LDR laid out in excruciating detail. It used to be in our LDR, guys, and I'm not quite sure, although I think I know, when it got dropped, but it used to be here.
Well, he's gonna get a copy and it's not now, so we.
Yeah, I probably need to look at that.
It probably got changed just before the last PUD.
Wasn't the conceptual PUD what the Corys did back in the teens?
They did a conceptual PUD for the hotel, wasn't it? Is that the one you're talking about?
No, I thought it was Jack Corey and Sweetwater before the
Oh,
Sweetwater.
oh, before the Sweetwater thing. Yes, they did a concept somewhere in all of my records. I've got the drawing of it, yes. the
So I wonder if
conceptual
they did
PUD.
it under the 2014 requirements.
Right.
Mhm.
right.
Yeah, yeah,
But did they ever come in with a final?
no, it didn't go through.
So, yeah.
Is that the one that Zach Childs was sort of leading for
Yes.
them?
Yes.
So just having, just the language that was presented to you last time, just to have clear expectations on both sides and how the process unfolds, I suggest is something that we need to look at. And that's all I have on that.
Would it be helpful to give the rest of y'all, have Tammy make y'all copies of what used to be in there so you could use it as a comparison?
I might have that in my old files.
Yeah,
That would kind of help. I could just email them to everybody.
okay. Either that or, you know,
It even had a mini PUD back then.
yes, it had a mini PUD, and I think the mini PUD is in this one, but I remember, I don't remember what year, but after 2014, we did away with the mini PUD. It might have still been in. So yeah, that's even in here. I think that was 3 acres, was the mini PUD.
Does anybody have any questions or comments?
What's the last piece?
That's what we're gonna talk about next, is the parking requirements for single family.
What I asked you before, the dedication part here is all crossed out.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm bringing that up, St. Joe Company, actually over the P&Z board, we used what's in here, the dedication of land for public road right-of-way purposes. They were going, I pretty much convinced them, and they agreed that they were going to put a road in right across from the townhomes, all the way to the water, for access to the beach for all the people living in the houses, the apartments, and everything else. Well, they found out where the road was supposed to go was in wetlands. So they couldn't do it, they had to move it over 50 feet or whatever. So what they did was, if you go to Canal Parkway right now, then parking spots at the end there, they put them in, that's their property, the road was supposed to go to there. So they had to use Canal Parkway, and that's what the city agreed upon. So to take this stuff out of here, I mean, it really takes a lot from you, because like we were talking about, the PUDs, that ain't gonna happen in Mexico Beach, it's gonna happen on the other side, and I don't even know if we would even have a PUD on the other side when that property gets annexed in, because it's gonna be annexed under Gulf or Bay County rules, and it's gonna be built just like the other phase of Sweetwater was.
It's in Part G of the final detailed PUD approval on page, I think my page number's not messed up. So it's on the 5th page. Part G, any applicable covenants, grants, easements, dedications, or other legal instruments in final form that will be associated with the development of the PUD.
Okay, so you just rearranged everything and
But I agree with Ron, if we have it detailed in certain sections here, and then this is more generic, I see it as stripping our protections, what little we have, out. I contend that we need to keep the more detailed pieces in.
Well, I would recommend.
I don't think your
you
current
look at-
language is detailed.
I would recommend you look at the 2014 language
Yeah.
and give Laura time to incorporate parts of that perhaps into her proposal to you guys. And take your comments and filter those also.
Do you happen to have that in the Word document? Yeah.
I remember back then, we created PDF documents that was searchable.
Yeah, but a searchable PDF is not the equivalent of
But
an
they-
editable Word document.
Oh, come on.
I can
I'm sure we can-
convert it to a
we
Word
can
document.
convert
If
it.
you have an idea, I can convert it to a Word document.
I've never seen it.
But
But you had to have a Word document to start with.
You are correct.
That would be better, a whole better.
We'll see what my whole files have.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, so I think the next thing we have on the agenda is discussion of parking requirements for single-family residential homes, because I know there's been some concern about that recently. And in your packet on the last page, just for discussion purposes, I put together, or Jacob put together for me, this matrix that shows different jurisdictions and what their requirements are and how they measure that. So you'll have, for example, Walton County, their code section, how they measure the requiring spaces, whether or not it's per bedroom or per unit, or how they do that, and what the requirement is for a single family detached opposed to a greater than single family detached. And just for comparison purposes, because I know some of this is referring to short-term rentals, we also added a column for lodging units, just so you know what that parameter is. And then the final column there is just the specific language from the code. So you get an idea of what others require for parking on single family residential.
Or is the space on the property itself, or is that
Yes.
includes no easement property?
Correct.
Okay,
On-site parking.
on site.
Yes.
Actually, looking at everything that's in here, Anna Maria is the perfect example that we could use here. Because it comes out, I mean, several emails I've had, I got from people living here concerned with that Second Street with people parking because it's all rentals. I mean, this would come out to a 1 and 2 bedroom, 2 parking spots, 3 bedroom, 3 parking spots, 4 bedroom, 4, which is pretty much common now. If you went to 5, it's still 4, but once you get to 6, now you have 5 parking spots. 7 would be 5, and 8 bedroom would be 6 parking spots. So I mean, we're stopping at 3 in Mexico Beach. So I mean, that would be what Anna Maria is using. I think it would be perfect for Mexico Beach for future development. And then somebody wants to put up a 7-bedroom house that's going to be rented out, need 5 parking spots
On the property,
on their property. Yeah.
not the easement.
Not the easement, on their property.
There's lots of them on the easement here.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So that would stop this right here.
Well,
Even-
you also
even though-
may look at square footage, like Walton
Like
County.
Walton does for 900.
Because you may say it's a bedroom, I guarantee you that they're gonna say it's
It's
a
a,
study,
computer room.
library,
Computer room.
computer room.
Office.
Yeah, the square footage seems like
Yeah.
an easier metric to enforce.
Right.
So when we do decide on how we're going to regulate this, I do need to let you know that we do need to regulate it by dwelling unit and not by short-term rental, because any house can become a short-term rental.
Yeah, it needs to be uniform,
Mm-hmm.
based upon the structure, not the use.
What is it right
And-
now?
2 parking spaces per house.
Yeah.
That's it. Regardless of the size of the house. And it is supposed to be inside the property lines.
On site. But does the city allow parking on the right of way?
Not counting, not to count. Not, yes, but not to count it as your required parking spaces. Can't get that out.
I can show you a brand new house. Brand new, just built it. And on C Street. Using the easement as part of the spaces. Brand new. I don't even know if you got a CO.
That's going on all over the place for boat parking too.
Yeah.
Where they actually gravel the city right away and park boats on it.
Yeah,
Pretty simple to drive around and see this stuff.
So we're proposing to change that.
So I'm looking for feedback from you all, on what you would like to see. I'm hearing Rock say he likes Anna Maria, and I'm hearing maybe we should look at Walton County's by the square feet, so if you could.
You know, just curious, but Walton County is the only one near us of these options. Did you look at Bay or Gulf?
Well, no. Walton County has, especially in South Walton, has an issue like what you're describing, with these big 14-bedroom homes, and then there's only 2 parking spaces. So that's why they recently, I would say recently, within the last 3 years, went to the square footage.
Okay. But you don't know what the requirement is on
I don't.
Cape San Blas is not that different than Mexico Beach
Right.
with the big homes being built up on them.
I would submit to you, Gulf County is not. I can look at it, but they're not going to be as sophisticated.
And then we've talked about enforcement. If you do build a 6-bedroom home and you build it on pilings, can all of that space underneath be considered parking?
Yes.
Okay, so if we changed it to 1 per 900, then how do you enforce later not closing that in and keeping it as parking rather than, I got my CO, I
Exactly.
want to close in the bottom for a man cave or a party place, and
Good
I'll just
question.
leave.
Or
Two
parking,
spaces
or
out
park
front.
in the yard, as long as they have the space.
So how would we enforce any of this?
If you have, if they have to get another building permit, that's when you would know what they were trying to do. And you would deny their permit if they're enclosing the parking, so to speak. That'd be one check and balance.
Unless they had enough room.
Unless they had enough room, and they showed on their development plan that they're gonna pave an additional area and they meet the impervious surface ratio to do that, then they can do that.
Or they don't get a building.
Well, as I sat back and thought about it, I'm not against 2 parking spaces for up to 3, but possibly even 4 bedrooms. I mean, there's a lot of people that build retirement homes that just have grandkids come stay. And what I don't wanna do is I don't want to hinder, some grandparent from building a 4-bedroom house with a grandparent so their grandkids can come stay. But anything over 4, you're gonna need some additional parking spaces. I mean, I just think in my house, I have a teenager, we have 3 bedrooms, we have room to park 3 cars. Like, that's what we need. But, having a 6 or 7 bedroom house and 2 parking spaces, people are gonna be in the street, and it's gonna cause a problem. So I'm kind of with you. I kind of like the square footage versus bedroom. I mean, 900 square feet, because if you're gonna build a 7-bedroom house, it's probably not gonna be.
So I guess
When the
what is
homes are
the,
advertised, it's at least 12, that's the intent.
what is the goal here?
To make people get off the street and onto the property with all the cars.
Well, this isn't gonna change that. The only thing that's gonna change that is if you prevent parking on the right of way.
Code enforcement. That's what
Well, you're with the existing problem, but going forward, it can put less spillover out onto the street.
If you build a house that's got a driveway for 3 cars, and you only have 3 cars, you're probably not gonna park on the street. You're probably gonna park in your driveway. But if you only have a driveway that holds 2 cars, then the 3rd car is actually going on the street.
But your driveway would have to be 3 cars wide for that to work, because if I have to move my car so somebody else can get out, I'm just gonna park on the right of way.
I have to do it every single day.
Yeah. But some people don't wanna do that, so they're gonna park on the right of way.
With kids, yeah, you're gonna have to do
Every
that,
single
yes.
day,
Yeah.
if I want to go somewhere, I'm having to shuffle the car around.
Sounds like
But we
square
also-
footage is the
But then we also have to
sensible.
take into
Marker.
consideration the number of people who have boats that they park in addition to the cars, don't we?
Well, you
You're
can't,
right, assume 900 square foot and enforce the parking regulations.
there's no way to assume whether or not somebody's gonna have a boat at their house.
or a golf cart or anything else they want to put on there. Parking pad.
But you
You'd
know,
have to
somebody's
look at the
building,
parking requirements, and to prohibit parking boats on the street or something along those lines.
I do like the square footage versus
I do too.
bedroom.
And
I think it's easier if you're in the building department, somebody comes in with a
Minimum
3200
two, and then if, you all decide how many square feet.
anything over square feet over 900 gets a parking spot.
I mean, I can probably park 7 cars in my front yard, it's gravel. I mean, I got grass on each side, but I got gravel, it's built house, I can park underneath it, this thing like a, you know, somebody's building a house and they're building a 7, 8 bedroom house. They don't have to have grass and a little 2-car driveway, they can put the gravel down, they know they have to have the parking spots, that's what they would do.
You should start a shuttle service.
I could do that.
So,
If I had my way, the whole yard would be gravel. The wife
So
wants
we're not
grass.
gonna relate it to bedrooms, we're gonna relate it to square feet.
Yes.
Yep,
Okay, so minimum 2 parking spaces. What is our threshold for more than 2? What square
9.
footage?
this, all, there, it says every 900.
Okay.
Is that-
so, okay, maybe I'm not thinking the way y'all are here. 1 space per 900 square feet. Instead of counting the number of bedrooms, but
Maybe reduce the square
900
footage.
gives you an awful lot of space, whereas a bedroom is not gonna be 900 square feet generally. So, it seems to me that you're not putting the same stringency on parking spaces if you go just with square feet. Maybe I'm not saying that right.
No,
I guess to get back to the argument of what we were saying is what the attorney was saying. Somebody could call their house a 2-bedroom house, and the other rooms are offices and studies and
Okay,
dining room.
I
You know.
get that because you sleep in the living room on a pull-out sofa, which equals a bedroom. But what I'm saying is, isn't 900 square feet awfully large? Shouldn't it be a smaller amount of square feet?
Well, what you're talking about is establishing the threshold. So figure out the size of the house that gets 2 parking spaces. Above the size of that house, then every so many square feet requires another parking space.
Okay.
You could say 700 square feet.
It wouldn't be 900, you're right, that's a lot of,
What's
that, it looks like that's a special condition for
South
South Walton County.
150, 200 the most of them.
So if you all decide
Yeah.
that the average 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom house, if you go with 4 bedrooms, is 3,000 square feet, and then anything above that at 300 square feet or 100 square feet is an additional parking space, then you could apply it that way.
Which would give, if we said 3,000 square feet, like you just said, how many parking spaces would that require?
3,000 square feet divided by 900 is 3.3.
Well, it starts at 2 originally, so it'd be 2, 3, 4, 900, 8, 99, 1,800, 27, so you'd be 2 originally, so you'd be 4 parking spots. That'd be 4 parking spots.
Okay.
That calculation gets, so that the 2 are automatic.
2 are automatic, so anything above that, but I could see making it small, like you said. I mean, because most bedrooms are 12 by 12s or 14
So
by
above
whatever.
that, there's
They're
2,100 square feet.
Yeah.
So above the 900 originally, there's 2,100 square feet. So if you have every 900 square feet, you would have to have 4.
So if you drop that down to like 500 square feet or 400 square feet
Yeah.
past a certain threshold.
Okay, okay.
Now, is that square footage counted on living space or total?
Heated.
of the house?
Heated and cooled.
I like
Heated
to, I like to say heated and cooled space,
Okay.
not just square feet.
Doesn't count
I think it has a real
garages or
tiny
porches or
kitchen.
anything.
And a tiny 2 or 3 tiny bathrooms, and then have a bunch of bedrooms, but if you did it on purely square footage, then.
So
Yeah, I think the,
what's common in South Walton County is not to even have a bedroom, but have a hallway with like a closet with bunk beds that are built into it.
Well, they
Mini
got them around
motel.
here too. They
They do.
figured out where to put
So if
beds.
you count bedrooms, you're missing those 2 bunk beds.
and I think that's what we're trying to figure out. How
Yeah.
much parking for the number of people that are hanging out in that home for a particular time
Exactly.
period, so. And if it's a big home, it's just, and advertised with sleep 16, then you're gonna have a bunch of cars, and we're trying to figure out how many cars need to go for these big places, or how many parking
I
places.
guess not to repeat myself, but what I'm trying not to do is I'm trying not to hamstring a property owner to where all of a sudden they've got to shrink a house for a parking space, as long as the parking, I mean, like if somebody's going to live in their house. So I know that a lot of times we're thinking about rentals are the problem, but you gotta be careful telling somebody like myself, like it's just gonna be my wife and I, if we build a 3,200 square foot, we don't need 5 parking spaces, obviously. There's just 2 of us living. There's a lot of retired people, like it or not, that do actually live here. I mean, there's 1,000 of us. And so I just don't really want it tied to a bedroom, per se. I mean, I think that if you build a 4,000 square foot house, you probably have room for 4 or 5 parking spaces. That's why I was liking. I mean, I was just thinking in my head, okay, right now I'm trying to build a house, and so mine's gonna land somewhere between 2,700 and 3,200. Well, I've got to have 4 parking spaces. That's reasonable. Like, and even if I had guests, and I filled up my bedrooms, it's still reasonable to have 4 parking
But
spaces.
I would
But
say
if you were adding
that
another
even if you
1,000
have,
square feet and building a 4,200 square foot house, you think that guy needs more parking.
Right. Exactly.
but I would say even if you're talking about that kind of situation, you're allowed to count the area in the carport or the garage, and your driveway is probably deep enough to hold 2 more cars, so there's 4 car spaces right there.
But, and yes, I agree with that in theory, but then it goes back to how do we enforce it, because they may fill that garage space up with garage stuff and you can't park a car in it anymore, so there goes 2 parking spaces right there.
Well, I think that,
That's what I'm saying. I don't think you're gonna accomplish what you're trying to accomplish by doing this. Because you're trying to get people from parking off the right of way. And the only way to do that is to prohibit them from parking on the right of way.
Yeah, enforcement, that's it.
tickets.
I mean, most people can park,
Towing.
if you only have 2 parking spots.
The word gets out pretty quick when you, hey, this is a speed zone, or we just saw them hooked up, go move your car.
Yeah, but in a beach community, how are we gonna delineate, are you gonna not be able to park on the right of way on 98 on the public beach? That's right of way too. And so are you just gonna limit it on certain streets? And
That dedicated beach is a dedicated beach
Yeah.
parking area, so that would probably have to be written in as exempt. because
I mean,
that's-
but as you know, everybody on the end of, you start at First Street, there's gonna be golf carts and cars that park
So
on the
you
right of way.
could, there's different ways to
Sometimes.
handle that, but it could be just the city's right of way.
Yeah.
Because that would be the state right of way.
So enforcement is one thing,
Yeah.
but still coming up with a requirement that makes sense for homes being built going forward is what we need to achieve here.
So we're saying a base size of whatever it is, I don't know what we came up with, is 2 spaces. Every 400 square feet above that base size requires an additional park. Is that what we're saying?
100 feet would be pretty low.
No, I said 400.
Okay.
I still have that problem, that might be a little low. I mean, somebody builds a 4,000 square foot house, you're gonna be requiring them to have 7 parking spaces. That's a little much.
Well, what is the base?
Well, your 2 parking spaces are gonna cover it, like say if it's 900, that's gonna cover your first 1,800 feet.
So are we saying,
A minimum of 2, but just whichever's greater, 900 square feet for every house, you know, if it's 4,000 square foot house, you divide 4,000 by 900, you get 4 point whatever,
That's what I thought.
and that's greater than 2, so that's gonna be your parking requirement. But if it's a 1,000 square foot house, you still have 2 parking spaces.
I think I get it.
So there's no base, there's a minimum of 2 parking
Minimum of
spaces,
two.
but other than that, if it's a
2.
4,000 square foot home, it's gonna be 4.5 spaces.
Well, 5
5 spaces.
You know,
It
build
makes sense.
5,
It
might
does.
as well make
It
it
makes
6.
sense.
You're gonna have double parking if you don't have 5 spaces. So it
Not
will turn out to
necessarily,
be six.
one can be deeper than the other,
Yeah.
so I think
But that,
I would
I mean,
stick
that's
with
a
the
pretty
map.
good improvement
Yeah.
out of 6. Yeah. But I think it might not solve the problem, but it will help it. Rather than somebody building a 8-bedroom house and having 2 parking spaces,
Yeah.
because those people are absolutely going on the road.
Yes.
And with 600, as Mel says, with 600 plus vacant lots in this town.
If that's what we agree on, what do we need to do to implement this? What's
I have
next?
enough input that I can put it into the regs when it comes back to you.
Is that good? 900?
Good.
Minimum 2 up to 900 square feet. And then 1 per, do we say 4 or 900 square feet after that?
I think
No,
900. Okay.
So what about the enforcement part of parking on railways? How is that going to be approached? I mean, that's what the people were complaining about. You go down the road, there's boats that are even in the street because they can't even fit in the right of way. Is there something, and if you drive, like I said, you can drive around Mexico Beach and come down that one-way street, and there's several lots that have gravel all the way out to where they
Yeah.
park their boats.
but doesn't that property run, you talking about Orlando?
Yeah,
Their property runs right to the road.
I think it's back a couple of feet.
No, it
No,
runs right to
Oleander
the
goes
road.
all the way down.
That's
to
their property.
Well, is the issue people being on the right of way or people parking on the right of way and then 2 feet of their car are out in the street? Because I'll just be honest with you, I wish I could park on a right of way across the street from my house, but you can't because like I'm going to be, my wheel's going to be in the road. And people aren't going to be able to back out because I live on 41st. And so if somebody parks in that right of way, you can't back out of the townhouses like at all. Like, you know, that's the problem we have with the brewery is people always want to park on that even though it says no parking. People want to park on the right of way, and then I've got to go in the restaurant and say, hey Jack, I got a doctor's appointment, you got to move your car so I can get out of my driveway. You know, but if people, I'm okay with people being, as long as they're off the street, being on the right of way. It's not, it doesn't look good, but I think from an enforcement standpoint, it's when people are blocking roads and have boat trucks and boat
That's a
trailers.
health safety issue
Yeah.
there.
And it is, and not trying to defend code enforcement, but when are all these people parked on the street? It's usually in the evenings and nights when these, you know, because everybody's out there in the day. And so she can be, Miss Lyons can be driving around and maybe there's a couple of people on the right of way, but go back at 8 o'clock at night and there's people piled up out there on the streets, especially in the summertime.
But is that a code or is that a sheriff's department?
That's a good question. That's something I don't know. But, you know,
But I don't think Kathy's equipped to handle hostile people
Well, I
like
mean-
a deputy would be.
And-
And I think someone would get hostile.
yeah.
What
And
do
we
you
are,
mean I gotta move my boat?
well, we are, let's don't forget, people come here to visit us in the summer and to have a good time, and that's okay. But sometimes just, I've always had a good interaction when I ask somebody nicely and explain to them like, hey, you can't park here because I can't get out of my driveway. People are generally nice. It's generally when you're barking at somebody, you don't really get a good response.
What happened
We're
with
not
that,
there to tell.
Yeah.
was it 2-3 years ago? Anybody who had any type of permanent structure on city right of way had to remove it. So if you had fence poles, decorative, whatever, you had to remove it because the city lawsuit, if somebody got hurt by hitting something on the city right of way, they could sue the city, so it all had to be removed. So I mean, to me, if I run into a car, it's
Another
gonna
workshop.
hurt more than a piece of wood.
Well, let me ask you,
You didn't remember when I went? The sheriff's department say something when people were complaining about parking in the right of way down at the beach accesses, and he said that they have the right to.
Your LDR and your code typically can be enforced either through law enforcement or your code inspector.
Because, Lisa, do you remember, somebody was complaining about people parking down in their yards on the right of way down next to the beach accesses, and I want to say that the sheriff's department said as long as they're parked in the right of way, it is legal to park in the right of way.
And
They do.
yes, I think that, I remember that
They do.
because we have always allowed public parking on the city right of way. I think that's on the books somewhere. which is one of the reasons that the right-of-ways are supposed to be kept clear, because that has always been public parking.
For events and Barker Park and all
Or
that.
going to the beach even, you know? The problem becomes when people block driveways and all of that, which is what happens in the summertime, yeah.
I believe that's it, right? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.
You know,
Plans to have it to